Welcome to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I'm your host, Jacob Cooper, best-selling author of Life After Breath and the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. For those of you who are new to my channel, thank you for coming by. Please make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification icon to stay up to date for weekly interviews, as well as spreading the good word by sharing our interviews, as well as your thoughts within the comments section. Today's guest is Kiersten Hathcock. Kiersten has won, is a Shark Tank winner. She's also incredible intuitive, and her gifts started in her later 30s. But we're also going to be discussing her profound transformation from trauma and abuse, and how intuition, helped really her own life and her connection to healing. So Kiersten is going to be a wonderful conversation. Looking forward to really learning more about her transformative story and how she was able to generate a greater knowing and greater hope past a lot of the pain that she unfortunately experienced in her life. So without further ado, we welcome Kiersten Hathcock on the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder. Kiersten Hathcock, thank you so much for coming here as an honored guest on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder.
Jacob, thank you so much for having me. This is such a thrill to talk with you. I love it.
Oh man, I think this was divine intervention, like it all is. And I know it's a segue for a lot of your story, but we had a mutual friend, Laura Carney, who was,
Mhm.
a guest on my show in the past, and she set this up. And I know from looking at a lot of your incredible interviews and presentations, incredible line of work, and just this jack of all trades type, I had to bring you on because you
No.
really did spark a great deal of interest and inspiration in myself, and I know many of my viewers. But for those of my viewers who
Mhm.
have not heard of Kiersten Hathcock, and
Mhm.
they must be under a rock because your impact is enormous. I mean,
Aw.
you're doing stuff on TED. TED I saw, Shark Tank winner. Intuitive. Obviously, I see you have your beautiful book, which we'll
Aw.
get into with Little Voices. But tell the viewers a little bit about your background and who Kiersten Hathcock is. We are
Thank
really enamored
you.
by you.
Thank you. That was
Yeah.
the best introduction. Seriously. I'm really honored. I feel like I'm kind of blown away, to be honest. But I don't feel like, I've had as much of an impact, as you've talked about, but I am so happy for, being able to reach the folks that I'm reaching. And, the story behind my story is that I had absolutely no interest in woo woo. I had no interest in studying anything about life after death. I was, basically bumbling along life and succeeding in different areas. I built a furniture company from our garage. I was on Shark
Mm,
Tank. I did all of this stuff that looks like on paper, oh man, she's so successful. But
mm,
I turned 36. I had 2 kids at the time. I was just living normal life, as we all do. And that was the moment that got hit over the head with intuition, with the afterlife. I started hearing and seeing things that I couldn't explain. I started hearing and seeing children in spirit. And of course, I thought, I'm losing it. Like, this is it. They're going to put me in, some sort of institution. So I was very happy that my husband believed in me when I first started saying, hey, some weird stuff is happening when I'm in the garage. So,
wow.
that's the beginning of my story. And it kind of unfolds in 3 different acts, to be honest with you. It's the awakening act. Then there's the, well, why is this happening to me act, where I, understand
Mm,
why they started coming to me. And then the final act, which was pretty tough. It was 3 years of an abusive relationship with a narcissistic predator that I fell down the rabbit hole with. And those same children who had been coming to me in spirit ended up helping me survive that relationship. So there's a lot of full circle moments in my story. But mainly, I'm from Ohio originally. I had no interest, like I said, in spirituality, really. And it wasn't
mm,
something that I sought. And that's, I think,
wow.
why people tend to, want to say, okay, tell me more about your story, especially folks who are in the same boat, as I was for 36 years.
Wow. And what caught my eye was your dad was a football coach, was it? Or into
Yeah,
football? Is
Yeah.
that right? Because to
Aw,
me, that like caught my eye. I am a football junkie,
I love
not a
it.
player, but more
Mhm.
so back in the day when we had America Online or
Uh,
AIM.
yeah,
My screen name as a young child was Gridiron 424, which means football, my date of birth. So I've
love
always
it.
been so that is super synchronistic that, you have the spirituality, but also dad was this football coach in middle
Yes.
of America. That's
It
cool.
is it is the coolest thing. I love that you're talking about my dad. First of all, he's gonna love this. So he is a retired football coach and athletic director from Defiance, Ohio. He's the best guy in the world. I mean, he really is. Aside from my husband Scott, but he was very grounded. He was also what's been interesting to watch as I've gone through this journey now. I just turned 50, so it's been a few years since all of this happened to me, but he absolutely believes in his intuition. He is a very deep loving soul, always has been, but it's been cool to see just through my experiences he's been able to fully accept and I think
Mm,
believe in what has
yeah.
happened and see it in his own life. It's really sweet, and he's a really good football
So
coach.
you're So I know the spirit world is grateful for the work that you're doing, but also within your family and soul family, just in terms of elevating the consciousness of those around you. That is beautiful to see, and
Oh.
thankful for Dad's work. Couple of my guests in my channel in the past have merged sports and spirituality, including my
Mhm.
good friend George Mumford, who coached Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and brought in
Amazing.
meditation and mindfulness to
Mhm.
athletes. So being from football town, Ohio, I know that's where the Kelsey brothers are from. You're in good graces here. But I wanted to just scale back a bit because you
Yeah.
really discussed a lot of layers.
Mhm.
And as we know, from author to author, how
Mhm.
many times do our editors tell us, show don't tell, right? We hear that
Right,
all the time.
right.
At least I
Yes.
did with everything because we know what happened in our heads, but we have to put it out in our books as if we're talking to someone from Mars and they have no idea what we're talking about. So take me through that moment. So you're
Yeah.
36 years old and you just kind of wake up and you start to see spirits, hear spirits. Like, what was that like? How did that feel? Like, take me through that onset because that is wild. A lot of people are, experiencing this stuff early in life, but what people don't understand is this is quite common for people to unfold their intuitive gifts in any stage of life, because it is innately who we are. It goes beyond chronology. But yeah, take me through that a little bit.
Sure, I'm happy to. So, like I said, I wasn't someone who was into any of this, and most of my days involved me being in the garage building kids furniture. But that was my company, self-taught furniture designer and carpenter. So I'm in the garage.
Okay.
These are the first moments I remember that I've shared quite a bit. I'm in the garage and I'm seeing nails move across the workbench on their own. Now, my first thought, being very scientifically minded, was, well, we must be having an earthquake. This is Los Angeles. And so,
Mm,
I'm kind of going through everything that I can attach myself to in terms of what this could really be in real life. I would turn around, I'm kind of like looking around, and then I would turn back and they were gone.
mm,
And then I would find them over on a different workbench. I would start to hear things. I would be in the garage and I would hear mom. And as a
mm,
parent, right, of two kids, I was just like, oh, somebody's calling me. Okay, I'm gonna go into the house. I go into the house as I'm walking into the house, and I'm thinking, wait, but wait, our kids are at school. What am I doing? Who was that? What am I doing? I started to smell smoke, all the traditional signs that, you and I know well now. But
sure.
at that time, I was just, first of all, thinking, okay, this is bizarre. And then I would dismiss it. But it got to the point where not only was I seeing and hearing and smelling and all of the clairs, I was actually, seeing them out here. They would walk through the garage, they would walk through the kitchen. They were mostly children. And that's when I
Mm,
really thought, okay, I'm losing it. I'm losing it. But,
mhm,
that was it was scary, to be honest with you. It was very scary. I didn't want to tell anybody. I told my husband, finally, I think about 3 or 4 months in, and I said something's happening to me. I had just learned Reiki, which I didn't put that together, but I had learned Reiki. It was the most woo-woo thing I'd ever done. And I learned that because I wanted to help our oldest child who was struggling with anxiety. And I reluctantly went into that. And, the most interesting part about that is the Reiki absolutely opened me up. I just had no idea that that was what was happening, at the time.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a Reiki practitioner, certainly
Yeah.
can attest to how the attunements, as well as just even going for your own Reiki healing could really open up your crown, your third eye,
Mhm.
and to bring up your intuition. So, yeah, really thank you for your endorsement of Reiki. And I
Yeah.
hope it was
Yeah.
helpful for your son as well, because it's a beautiful modality, started by Dr. Mikao Sui. So
Yes.
you're seeing a lot of these child spirits.
Mhm.
When did you know that this is something that was psychic versus something that you thought might have been psychotic? Like, where was this something that like, this
Yeah.
is real, this is true, this is really something going on? Because I know when something's new, we could all just overanalyze ourselves and just drive ourselves crazy. So when did you feel like, whoa, this is authentic? There is a case of eternity right in front of
Mhm.
me, and this is true as anything.
Well, I remember it, very clearly. It was probably about a year in, to be honest with you, of stuff happening, and I was really good at, pushing things away. I was very good at just not really thinking about it, and being kind of quiet about it. But I'm sitting at I had took a break. I was building furniture. I'm sitting at my desk in the kitchen. Facebook is up. That was really kind of our connector back in those days, because this was around 2009, right? And it was like my only connection from the garage to the outside world. So I'm looking at Facebook and I'm seeing a friend of mine that I didn't know very well, but we went to high school together. And I saw that there was a
Sure.
memorial post, that they had posted about their son who had passed away. Now, the first thing I thought was, I didn't even know they had a son. Oh my God, that is just heartbreaking. The second thing that I heard was hi. And I had head to
Mm,
toe chills. I thought, wait, who's saying, why am I reading this? But I started to connect the dots that as I'm reading this, I'm actually hearing Nate is his name. And I talk about him quite a bit in the book. That was wonderful and terrifying because, of course, I truly didn't know if that was the moment, if that was real. But I thought, well, if it is real and he's asking me to please share messages with his parents, then I'm going to write it down. So I took the half step.
mm,
I was like, okay, I'm going to write it down. So he told me a bunch of stuff. And to be honest with you, I don't really remember a lot of what I channeled from him that day. But I wrote it all down and then I just kind of tucked it away in a side drawer. And then at that point, like 2 or 3 days later, because I was really avoiding it, I'm in the garage and I just had this like wave of peace come over me. I think it was sanding a toy box. And I just felt this, it's going to be okay. It's time. Because I had sort of been thinking, well, I'll get a sign if it's really real and I should pass this. And then that was
mm,
my sign. So the minute I got that sign, I went inside. I wrote to his mom and said, hi, I don't know if you remember me. I was a couple years younger than you in high school. I mean, can you imagine, right? I was terrified,
mm,
to write this because they live in my hometown where my parents live. And so, first of all, I didn't want to hurt them. I didn't want to cause more pain. I
sure.
also, just thought I'm going to be the laughing stock of my hometown in Ohio. And I
Mm,
don't want this, that I don't want that either for my parents. Uh, Denise is his mom, and she wrote me back right away. And she said, I would love to talk to you. And so that began a relationship that we have had, a tight one ever since. And I was able to share a bunch of information that they
wow.
just kept saying, there's no way you could know this. And there really was no way. And his father
Mm,
was funny. We just had a book club event, and his dad is wonderful. His dad's a nurse at a hospital. And he said, I think I'm ready to share Nate with, my story and our story with everyone I work with. And we have a book club. So we're going to have Little
hmm,
Voices as the book. And can you come on? And I said, absolutely. Now, when we see each other, we tend to cry and stuff. It's very emotional because they
mm,
absolutely helped me as much as I helped them. But in that book club, he just kept saying, Kiersten, you know, I was really mean to you. And to be honest, I don't remember
hmm,
that. Maybe I blacked that part out. But he said, I was really mean to you. I was really unsure. And I could see how much Denise was hanging on to everything you were saying. And of course, it took more validation for him to say, oh my gosh, this is real. So
Wow.
they were really my, the first people that helped me understand that it was real, and they were kind of a safety net, even though it felt very scary at the time.
Hmm. Wow. It was incredibly brave and courageous, on many fronts for you to do it, but now you see through
Mhm.
trusting your intuition, the power, potentially just changing a whole life. And I'm sure it doesn't bypass, a parent's pain or their own loss,
Mhm.
but certainly there's a tremendous correlation of a belief or a knowing, and the grief processing. And my hope is maybe that box that she had of her child was now
Mhm.
not under the ground, but something that, didn't have any parameters and it was always connected to her beyond
Yes.
the veil. So I think you
Yes.
really brought a lot of validation, but isn't it amazing what one post on Facebook that comes into your
Right.
awareness, someone that you haven't seen or thought of in quite some time, and now all of a sudden, this, spirit has kind of used, you as a vehicle to really, you know, accelerate her grief process and healing process. And now it's beautiful to see the
Yeah.
friendship that, goes on with her and her spouse and her family
Yeah.
and book club. It's just amazing how things work and the orchestration involved.
It is, and, Nate is still with me. I mean, I just felt him a second ago when we were talking about him. He's here,
Wow.
and,
Nate the Great.
he's Nate the Great, yeah, exactly. Oh, he likes that, that's funny. He was definitely one of those people that, I never knew, obviously, in life, but, in his physical form, but he saved me. He absolutely was one of those kids when I
Wow.
went down the rabbit hole and I didn't know what was happening. He was the one helping pull me out. And, he
Mm.
was the one who gave me confidence in this gift. And I truly do believe that we all have intuition. I think we all have mediumship gifts. I think that mine all kind of came together at this perfect point, for multiple reasons. And, I'm grateful. I'm really grateful that he stepped in and said, hey, I'm gonna see if she'll take the bait. I'm grateful for that.
Oh, wow. Well, you're obviously a trusted, ethical soul to be put in a position of such vulnerability and, heightened, acuity of grief. So thank you for all that you've done in listening to this. I wanted to ask you, because you've mentioned a lot of
Mhm.
children seem to have been coming, into your life from the spirit
Mhm.
realm, as you said, 36 years old, working in the wood shop. A lot of them just
Right.
came to you. To be clear, my question is twofold. A, why do you intuitively feel that, out of all things, that children, which
Yeah.
is beautiful, are drawn to you? And also, how do you feel it works in the spirit realm? Because I know
Mhm.
some people connect to different spirits, maybe potentially than others, or different
Yeah.
realms. Why is it, and how do you feel that has worked for you? I guess this question is on a micro as well as
Yeah.
macro basis too.
Sure. No, those are great questions. So I think, for me, there was a purpose in the children coming to me. The one thing that it was really interesting is, it's not just regular furniture that I was making, it's children's furniture. And kind of unbeknownst to me,
Mm,
I wrapped my entire life around kids, not only my own kids, but other kids. And I wanted to be an elementary school teacher when I was, in college, and ended up going a different route. But everything about my life has sort of been about kids. Um, the other thing that, the thing that I didn't know, and the reason why they were coming to me, is because, at the age of 40, so I was 36 when I started channeling. When I hit 40, I started having visions of myself, as a tiny child between the ages of 3 and 6, being sexually abused and raped by my
wow.
uncle.
Mm,
Yeah.
hmm,
And so what was interesting, like Nate was not, a child who was sexually abused by any means, but he was sort of my first entry into that world, of being able to communicate with children. What I started to notice after he came in, many of the children, whether they were killed by pedophiles or not, and that was coming quite a bit, many of them had endured some sort of sexual abuse. in their lifetime.
mm,
And that was, I was noticing it, but it wasn't until I started having my own visions and seeing myself
mm,
that I understood I'm in their club. Like this is why they're coming to me. Many of them are coming to me. And
mm,
so, I am so grateful for them for trusting me to give, to share their stories with me, but also for helping me understand that that happened to me. And I think,
mm,
repressed memories get a bad rap for sure. But I absolutely was the woman who repressed memories until I was 40. And, I can point to a lot of actual facts. Now that I'm older and I know what happened to me, I had to have vaginal surgery when I was 19. There were things that did not make sense to me, and,
mm,
I can look back now and say, well, that was scar tissue. And I had no idea, yet I thought it was congenital. So all of that stuff kind of fed in together, and it made me understand why I was pleaser, why I was
mm.
always just trying to, stay safe. Right. And like, okay, everybody good. Okay, good. Phew. Okay. I didn't know that that was part of what happens when you're a childhood sexual abuse survivor.
Hmm. Wow. Wow. So, and obviously, certainly thank you for sharing this because I am
Hmm.
certain there is going to be, potentially a viewer who listens to us and sees
Yes.
you and sees that, hey, it's possible to go what I go through and to have, a life and to move forward and to be someone who makes an impact like a Kiersten
Hmm.
Hathcock on this world. And we certainly thank you, for sharing that. And more importantly, it seems like a lot of the incredible pain that you went through really influenced this beautiful purpose that you're living. And I think that that's a beautiful transformation. And I'm sure
Wow.
that allows a lot of people to see a lot of what they went through and you as just kind of like this beautiful North Star that they could guide their lives.
Aw.
So thank you.
Well, I hope that they don't feel alone. I mean, honestly, that's it. I don't know how much of a guiding star I am, but I also just believe that, the biggest thing for me was understanding, I'm one of many who have been sexually
Mm,
abused, and understand the ramifications of that and what happens when you're an abuse survivor. And that's completely separate from my intuition, but it's also connected. And that's what it's one of the reasons I wrote Little Voices. I feel like because I was a people pleaser, because I trusted my uncle when I was tiny, um, you know, your natural, innate, intuitive compass,
mm,
it's broken. Because how do you feel like you can trust, what you were feeling when I trusted my uncle? And he did that to me.
mm,
So, a lot of what I talk about nowadays is that y- you can learn to trust your intuition again. You can ask for signs, that it really is a compass if you believe in it. And um, if you just accept that, what, I actually do have some guidance here.
mm,
I've got guidance within from my higher self. I've got guidance from, folks on the outside who are my spirit
mm.
team. And that made a huge difference in my life.
It seems like a lot of the vantage point of power was externalized, and from listening to your
Mhm.
intuition, it was internalized, and you were certainly went from someone who was felt disempowered to empowered. I think that's a
Absolutely.
beautiful juxtaposition and transformation. So,
Wow.
so true. And certainly we're going to certainly get into Little Voices. I love the title and I want to hear a little bit
Thank you.
more beyond the title, but more importantly, the book.
Mhm.
I just wanted to know, just to clarify. So, in other words, from what you're saying, there seems to be a magneticism in the spirit realm, much like
Mhm.
reflective over here, like people that you could identify with, as I say, birds of the
Yeah.
feather flock together, like people that you could, formulate just a connection with, you'll have. So it seems like there's, a linearity to that in the spirit realm from what you're saying with kids who
Mhm.
went through a lot of adverse childhood experiences and traumatic experience. It seems like they were drawn to you, and you would say
Mhm.
that they would almost kind of like use you to a heal what happened to you, but also this greater calling that they were getting you ready for. It seems.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I didn't, I had to really kind of piece that together. It took a few years for me to really understand the scope of it. A lot of the cases that I work on, I do this on a volunteer basis. I should say. I got my hand slapped the other day when I said, "Well, I'm not a professional." And they're like, "You're a professional," but I don't charge. And one of the detectives that I've known now since
Mm,
2014, he and I founded a nonprofit called the National Institute for Law and Justice, and we worked together on a missing persons case.
mm,
And that led to us actually forming this nonprofit so we can help families of crime victims and help families of some of these kids that were coming to me,
mm,
try and get closure, try and figure out, some of these cases are from the 60s, the 70s, the
mm,
80s. So, yeah, it's been really interesting to see how many of them have sort of lined up to say, "Hey,
mm.
she's doing it. She's over there and she actually has these dudes that she can pass this information to." And we have this whole
Wow.
network, of retired NYPD detectives and detectives all over the world, to be honest with you. And, and that's been really rewarding because there were kids just even last week, I wasn't doing anything where I was thinking about intuition. I was watching the Grammy Awards, I think, with my husband, and we're sitting on the couch, and a 15-year-old walked in,
Mm,
and I immediately took notice, like, I don't know who this is. I haven't seen her before.
mm,
And yet I had been working on a serial killer case with NILJ and the detectives. And this particular man, who's thankfully in jail, but he has claimed he's killed over 100 women and girls in his time.
mm.
And and she came in and said he killed me, and she showed me, a lot of detail. And so I was able to
Wow.
pass that information. We're able to actually start looking, into, okay, what's in the evidence locker? Can we tie
Mm,
him to this particular case? Can we solve this just with DNA?
mm,
Since, there's a lot of DNA advancement since the 70s and 80s. So I'm honored when they walk in and they share this information with me. It's not light stuff. And I've had
mm,
to kind of figure out how to, be human and do this
mm.
work. And sometimes it is really heavy. I will admit that. But
Wow.
I'm so grateful to be able to do it.
And it is beautiful work, and it just reminds me the validation of the spirit realm and just some of
Mhm.
the themes that I've noticed just on my channel. I mean, for
Yeah.
instance, Kirsten, uh, one of my colleagues and I guess friends, Alison Dubois. I don't know if you're
Yeah,
familiar with
I
her. They had a
am. Yeah,
whole
she's
show,
wonderful. Mhm.
um, you know, called Medium, but certainly she
Mhm.
worked very closely with law enforcement and high-profile cases. I believe the Elizabeth Smart case she was involved with, and
Yes.
behind a lot of the Amber Alerts, but, kind of like yourself, I think she was almost kidnapped as a child, and a
Mm.
voice told her to not get in the car. She didn't get in the car, and that helped her. So it seemed like a lot of her, experiences and intuition as a
Mhm.
child influenced her work. And I'm seeing parallels with you where with what you went through, the pain that you went through, you're now on the other
Mhm.
side of it to do all you can to avoid it and to use these superpowers to work, coinciding with law enforcement to most importantly help out, these distraught families to find, some degree of closure, understanding
Right.
about their child and what's going on. So I validate you
Oh, thanks.
immensely and, certainly very grateful for that. I wanted to ask you with the children that you
Uh-huh.
see, and this is kind of an out there question. Um, do you feel children, they may show themselves as children, but behind
Mhm.
that is something else? Like it's kind of like an actor suit as to like, this is the role that I'm showing you on, but I
Mhm.
have other roles that I've played in other lifetimes. Like, do you feel chronological age is synonymous with soul age? Because I'm curious as to what you think about that.
You're the first person to ever ask me that. I love this question. Thank you. So I agree with you. I mean, I think we can't be in the world now and not have lived many, many lifetimes and many variations. And so I do believe that soul age, is definitely a different thing than
Mhm.
chronological age. However, what's interesting to me is that sometimes they will come in and they will show me the age in which they know I will get the reference. So if I
Mm.
knew a child had passed away when they were 4, they might show me that they are 4. Sometimes they'll come in and they'll show me what they would have looked like as an adult, because maybe there's some frame of reference for me there. So in terms of what they actually show me, it's kind of fascinating. I tend to, not only do I channel children who have been killed, I channel a lot of children who have died very suddenly. I channel souls who have been through abortion and miscarriage and that type of thing. Um, and I'm really grateful for that, because
Mm.
I think that there's so much shame right out in the world about so many of these topics, and it's beautiful to know. In my view, and what I have heard, there's a lot of co-creating going on. There's a lot of choices. If there is a choice to be made, that choice is being made together, whether or not you recognize that that soul is helping make that decision or not. So I'm trying to be vocal about those things, because I think, especially as women, we there's there's so much on us. There's just so much shame in the world, and with what is happening in the world right now. So I try to talk about the hard things, and sometimes it's hard to talk about the hard things,
Mhm.
apparently. But
Well, I
yeah.
thank you. I certainly thank you. And as someone who works in the mental health field,
Mhm.
I love that you're owning your story and you're not putting shame, as they say in the mental health game, but you're able to really own a lot of these experiences that happen to
Mhm.
you. But from, you know, as a therapist and someone who works,
Mhm.
very closely with trauma, I'm curious as to what you
Mhm.
feel the correlationship was between your connection with the spirit realm,
Mhm.
and a lot of the, unfortunate circumstances and abuse that has happened to you. Do you feel at 36, once you connected to that, that
Mhm.
that was something that supported this healing journey despite that wound now being open? And I know you said you were able to remember this stuff, and I'm sure that was very intense, but I'm wondering how you were able to really progress through
Mhm.
that trauma recall, that came up to you later in life.
That's a good question. And thank you. First of all, thank you for the work that you do. I have multiple and have had multiple therapists and psychologists who helped me through a lot of this stuff. But I did not do healing well, which is what led me down the path of falling in love with a narcissistic predator. I did not understand wounded attachment and how the subconscious works. I definitely believe that, all of what was happening with me with the children was leading me to understand. It was kind of like uncovering little by little what was actually buried. And then what was really interesting is to understand, like, I've always felt like, okay, well, I got this together. I can do this. I'm a do it kind of fixer person, as you can imagine, since I'm a carpenter. And I've always believed that I could do whatever I set my mind to.
Mm.
And so when I started to finally have those revelations of the abuse, I thought, well, I'm gonna go to therapy. I'm gonna go, talk about this. Check. As if just
Mm.
talking about it was going to heal. And what I started to recognize, unfortunately, like 2 or 3 years into an abusive
Mm.
relationship, was that little Kiersten was driving the bus, because guess who was almost identical to my uncle, the man that I went down the rabbit
Mm.
hole with, Tony. And so, but I didn't see
Wow.
that even as an adult. I was a 40-year-old woman, and I didn't see the parallel between the two. But by standing up for myself, by surviving that situation, by saying I'm not doing this, and getting out, I was
Mm.
able to help heal little Kirsten. And that has been a game changer in my life.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah, in such a big
Awareness
way.
is Awareness is big, and awareness of themes and being able to take a step back, self-reflect, understanding the gravitational pull that we have towards familiars and how we
Yes.
sometimes attract that. And there's a comfort zone, and sometimes that comfort zone, while it being familiar, is, as you've experienced and so many others,
Mhm.
is quite unhealthy. So it seems like you have
Yeah.
understood some of the
Yeah.
common themes and being able to look at that dead in the face, know it for what it is,
Uh,
and just, stop the cycle, break the pattern.
yeah. And, that's why I'm so glad that, I put little voices out there because I hear from women mostly. I do hear from some men, but all over the world. And they always say, I've never told anybody this, but I was a childhood sexual abuse survivor, and then this happened to me too. And I went right down there. I didn't understand the connection between the two. What I also think is interesting is when I met Tony, um, I had like head to toe chills. I had all of those
Mhm.
signs that I would get with when spirit walked in the room.
All the
And
red
so for
flags.
right,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
what was interesting is they didn't present as red flags. It presented like when I met him, I thought, God, I've known him forever. There must be like some kind of soul connection here. And I
Mhm.
was only getting all of those chills and all of that stuff, which was my
Mhm.
go sign. So yeah, it was
Mhm.
really confusing because from an intuitive standpoint, I was getting go, go, go. Could it have been them going, no, this is not what we need you to
Right.
do, like abort. But
Right.
yeah, but had I not gone through that, I know that a similar situation would have presented itself because
Mhm.
little Kirsten was not healed. I had
Mhm.
not, I had not even recognized how much pain there was there.
Well, thankfully, you really
Yeah,
cleaned that wound and
yeah,
recognized it, and were able to transcend a lot of stuff. So, let me ask you. This
sure.
is something that I saw, but just a random part about you that you were on Shark Tank, which is
Yes.
incredible. And not only that, you were a winning contestant. So, that's just remarkable. From someone who experience what you did and then now
Mhm.
to be able to go in the most public forum, Mark Cuban, Mark Hershkovich, all
Mhm.
them boys, and people
Mhm.
on that panel, to go in front of the sharks and to be judged. Like, how did you handle that? How did that come about? And what did that mean to you on your mental health and spiritual journey to get that accolade,
Mhm.
would you say?
Well, thank you, first of all. I always joke nowadays and I say that I thought Shark Tank was gonna be, the bravest thing I ever did, and boy, was I wrong. Because Shark Tank, those days, I was just kind of coming into my gifts. I was just sort of going through that awakening. I was trying to harness that at that point, but it was very new. That was scary, but I will tell you that I learned to trust my intuition during Shark Tank. I
Mm,
I was coached by some producers. Once they said, "Okay, we're gonna pick her, a mom in a garage with a tool belt. She's in,
all
right?"
right.
And they said, "We want you to write up your script, your speech, the thing that you say, the pitch when you come out."
Mhm.
So I wrote it up, and then it gradually kept getting edited, just a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. They just kept saying, "Well, this sounds good. Why don't you just go keep practicing, and then in like
Mm,
3 weeks, we're gonna have a run through right before you're actually filmed and you meet with the real sharks." So that run through happened on a Friday. We were filming on a Sunday, and
mm,
I felt like, okay, I got this. Like I'm a public speaker. I'm trained in some of this stuff. This should be really easy
sure.
for me. It was not. And it wasn't because my pitch became something I didn't recognize. So I stood up and I said the
Mm,
first line and then I just blanked completely. So I had the whole team of producers running over and they liked me, which was good. Thank
mm,
goodness. Because some of the folks they're not, not so fond of. But they came over and they wanted to help and they said, just go home and
mm,
practice. You've got this, Kiers. You have such a great story. You've got this, you've got
mm,
this. And I just looked at them and I was in tears because I was so embarrassed. And I said, I don't got this. Like, I'm going to have to go home and rewrite this. And then it
mm,
just got quiet and they all freaked out. Don't rewrite
mm,
it. No, no, you're only 2 days away. Well, I did. My intuition and my gut was saying,
mm,
you got this, rewrite it. So we're sitting that
mm,
night at our daughter's little cheerleading thing. And I just pulled out like an old receipt out of my purse and I started writing. If someone had told me 10 years ago, I'd have an internationally known furniture company out of my garage. And that was the first part of my pitch. And then I just kept
mm,
writing because I think I was channeling it, but I didn't quite understand that's what was happening.
mm,
And that was the only reason I ended up with 2 offers because I was able to actually go in and, really say, this is really from my heart how I feel. And I felt confident. Otherwise, I think I would have bombed again had I tried to just memorize it. So some of those lessons about intuition and trusting your own gut,
Mhm,
even though you're, standing there talking to a bunch of TV
mhm.
producers, that was also invaluable for me. So yeah, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that I was able to do that. And I actually just recently went ahead and closed up shop because we have so many other things happening like NILJ, and there's some film and TV stuff that is in the works. And I thought, you know what? It's time. It served its purpose. It was great for me for, 18 years. It's time. So I was able to grow it internationally. And then I just ended up shutting it down this past year.
Wow. 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 Well, it seems from your path, intuition, once you're tuning into it, never leads you astray in the biggest or brightest lights. And that intuitive compass is a better producer than anyone out there. And that's not a pun intended to them, but when you listen to
Yeah.
this, and it's not us, when you get out of the way and you listen to that, higher voice, it just allows us to come back to that natural voice within. And that's what really people gravitated to. I think when people are overcoached and stuff like that, they are
Hmm.
very much taken away from that voice of authenticity. And I could listen to person A and person B speak, and they could say almost the same exact things. But if there's congruency with those words from person A and lack of
Hmm.
congruency with what that person is saying and who that person is, I guarantee there's going to be more people pulled to that speaker. And
Right.
I think you're exactly right. You really got to speak from the heart. You got to speak from the truth. Got to be authentic. That
Yeah.
where really goes far. People. Um, I had a grandfather who worked in the tool business, and
Oh,
I
I
asked
love
him
that.
yeah, and he taught me a lot of different tools, and I
Uh-huh.
happened to look exactly like him at another age. But I asked him, "How are you so successful in your business?" And he said, "It's not so much what I sold, but people came to me for who I was and the person that I was and my energy." And so
I
I
love
think
it.
so many times we try to be something that we're not instead of just
Mhm.
being true to who we are. And that's our biggest key to success. And Kiersten, it seems for you, you are certainly that living embodiment. So thank you for
Aw.
being authentic.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you. I've loved talking to you. I could talk to you every day. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is wonderful. I'm just,
a great,
I
great
feel like
conversation.
yeah, thank you. I feel like if I had had this information when I was younger, if I had been taught, hey, you've got a compass inside of you and it's called intuition. And when you get this feeling, or when if you see someone that maybe not everyone else sees, it's okay, it's real, that type of thing,
Mhm,
then I think life might have been different for me, throughout, I guess, until I was 36, right? So that's
mhm,
really what I'm trying to do, is just spread that. And it's cool to see it happening with our own kids. And our youngest daughter calls me up and says, hey, I'm gonna pull out the tarot cards, and I'm really feeling off about this one musical thing, or I'm feeling like,
mhm,
and it will prove to her that her
mhm.
feeling was spot on. So it's cool to see that she has that compass that I didn't have at her age.
Amazing. And obviously people who might have been abused verbally, physically,
Mhm.
sexually, they are often dismissed, gaslit. They're taught that their voice does not matter, to put
Right.
all their power and trust into someone else because that leads to that power and control dynamic. And so for you, what you are doing is people are listening to their intuition, but it's also empowering people. And this, firmly believe, could help people in all walks of life. But most importantly, in your case, for people who might have had that voice, at a time overtaken by the abuser, to now really find this voice that transcends all
Mhm.
things in their lives and to get them back to that voice of authenticity. So I
Oh,
applaud you for that. Um, Now let's talk about your book because I
yeah.
can't, when people often see a book, they just don't know what goes
Mhm.
into that, from
Yeah.
all the phone calls, the vulnerability that goes
Yeah.
into it, the drafts that we have to go through. So I wanted to just hear a little bit about Little Voices and how you came to just say, you know what, Kirsten, it's time to write this book. It's time to get this out there. And how did that all, come to be?
Sure. So, I escaped that abusive relationship. My husband and I had split up and we got back together, which is a really awesome part of the book. It's a lot, there's a love
Uh,
story in there, and that's my favorite part of the book,
oh,
actually.
yes, yes.
But about that time period, it was like 2017. I was getting that nudge, like, you need to write this. You need to write this. And I kept thinking, okay, when am I going to do that? I'm like working full time, taking care of, kids, the whole thing. So I would write in the middle of, on a road trip to a meeting. I
Mhm.
would just fit it in when I could. I would get up in the morning. It took 3 years. And I didn't know enough even at that time to know that I actually didn't have to write the whole book. I could just write the nonfiction proposal to sell it. But I wrote the whole book. And, that was also nice. That was a beautiful thing because I was using my intuition, figuring out, okay, who do I need to pitch for an agent? How does all of that work? And what feels right to me. So I did that. I relied on that. Ended up within a couple months, an amazing agent who was also highly intuitive. And then it took 2 years to actually sell the book. There was a point at which one of the kids came to me, Jason, who's in the book, and he came to
Mm.
me and he said,
Getting chills because
"Are
that's my
you?"
f that's my best friend's name since preschool. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure he's gonna like you. That's for sure. So he came in and he said, "Kiers, you put your book down. There's more to write, but you gotta put it down for like a year." And my
Wow.
agent was trying to sell it at the time, right? And I was so disappointed because
Right.
I'm like, "What? We have to put it down for a year?" So I didn't even tell her. But sure enough,
Mm.
it took a whole other year for everything to come together, and it was literally, I think, a week before, I got the book deal with Postal Press, and they're distributed by Simon& and Schuster, which was really awesome. I got the book deal right after Detective Mark Pucci called me, and he said, "Kierst, it's time, isn't it?" He said, "Let's do this. Let's do this nonprofit." And
Hmm.
I
Wow.
kind of, my jaw dropped and I went, "Oh, that's the more. That's, this is all coming together. I have to write about that piece too." So, yeah, it was
Oh,
really
wow.
interesting, how all of that timing played out. And had Jason, not come in and said, "Oh, you slow your roll," I don't know if I would have, like, I would have just kept thinking, "Well, I can control this. I can control this." Like, it had a fate of its own, it absolutely did. I kept seeing a tree as a logo for the publishing
Mm.
house, and it ends up being the last publishing house on the list. My number is 44. It's the 44th one. I had gotten 43 rejections, and the logo is a tree. And I had
Hmm.
been seeing a tree logo forever, and I just never looked at them for some reason. So,
Mm.
I was getting a lot of nudges along the way. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of work that goes into writing a book, as you know. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
People just think like, you could be like, Deepak Chopra or Wayne Dyer and pot these things out like candy, but, if the average
Mm,
person, you have a job. I understand Herman Melville wrote Moby Dick, and he worked full time too, and that was a
yeah,
big book, but
yeah.
it takes a lot of energy. You have to really put yourself in the right spot, but
Yes.
it seems like you are true to form in all walks of your life when you've been successful, when you have listened to that little, voice, and
Yeah.
so I thank you for being patient with it, for getting the story out.
Aw.
Was your book healing and cathartic to you? Because, I know as a therapist,
Mhm.
with a lot of my clients, especially those who have been through trauma, we have a modality called trauma focused cognitive
Mhm.
behavioral therapy. And a big
Yeah.
part of that is narrative therapy, where they talked about their life before the trauma, what
Uh-huh.
happened, during it when they are ready, and then talk about the transformation that they could see themselves past it. Because many times we
Mhm.
go through something we can't see, there's no bandwidth to see stretch past that experience. And so
Right.
there's cathartic value in there. But I'm curious for you, did
Mhm.
you find that it was like healing for you, that the writing process?
I did. I really did. And I thought, there was a moment where I thought, well, am I doing what everyone wants to do? Like, I'm going to write it all out, or do I truly have a book here? Like, is this really something that the literary world wants? And I thought, you know what? I'm going to throw caution to the wind because I do feel intuitively that this is a book, that is meant to be out there. The story is meant to be out there. There were a few chapters I did not want to write. Very, very
Mm.
difficult. And I even found when I, narrated the audiobook, there were some really tough parts to actually narrate as well. I did have a lot of support, which was really sweet in the audiobook booth. So I did not expect it, but one of the kids, Nate in spirit, actually opened a door for me because I was starting to get really kind of hyperventilating and feeling a little claustrophobic. And the door opened on its own. And then guess what? The audio engineer is now a super believer where he was not
Oh,
before.
wow.
So, it's kind of neat to see. It's neat to see how it all fans out. But yeah, but back to the book itself. It was very cathartic. It was very hard. And I think if you were thinking about writing a book about your trauma, go for it. Like 1,000% go for it. Um, I don't think that I would be as healed in where I am now. I mean, I don't know if I'm ever going to be 100% healed, but I don't think I would be where I am now without writing all of that out, because that was absolutely part of my healing. And I just, happened to, over a 5-year period, get quote unquote lucky. And it sold. So
I love it. There's a quote that I always use by Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel,
mm,
which is, "God made us because God loves stories. We are the stories of God." And it
yeah.
seems like for you, you were able to define the story, not allowing the story to define you. And I think that that is the really change of position and healing approach and empowerment approach
Oh,
that happened in your book and in your life. And I know for many of my viewers to really take ownership of the story,
mhm.
take that pen in your hand, don't let it define you. You could define it. And Kiersten Hathcock is living
Oh,
proof of that in the life that you live. Now, Kiersten, for those who want to get in touch with you,
mhm.
purchase your book, as well as follow your work, where is the best way to follow you and to get in touch with
Okay.
you?
So it's pretty easy. It's KirstenHathcock.com, although the name is not easy. But Kiersten, Kiersten, Hathcock, Hathcock.com. So you can find everything there. I have written quite a lot of blogs about spirituality, about healing from abuse, about healing from childhood sexual abuse. I try and put out whatever I can to help others, because I was scouring the internet when I was going through my healing, both from the abuse that I endured as an adult and also as a child. So there's a lot of good stuff there. And I'm on all the socials and even on TikTok. I don't want to be, but I'm on it.
Yeah, yeah. I
All,
feel you.
yeah.
Yeah.
You feel me on that?
Well, it's interesting. You could put me in front of any amount of people, I'm pretty good, but
Uh-huh.
ask me to, like, go on a live on TikTok, for some reason, I get nervous. So it is interesting.
It's
Um,
scary. Yeah.
Social media, I don't know, I'm fine in person, but
Yeah.
online, it's a little bit weird. But certainly, we're both doing a great deal of exposure
Yeah.
therapy by talking about, you know, dead or death, which is
Yes.
a top
Yeah.
5 fear, and also doing public speaking, which is another top 5 fear. So, we're certainly doing a great deal of exposure therapy and approaching head on the biggest fears that most people have, looking at it and really seeing it for the nothingness that it is, because there is no true death in the end,
It's
and
true.
when we're coming from a place of service and trying to improve others, there's
Mm.
no fear there. We're tuned into love, and that's the God actualization and realization, is about service and making a ripple effect. And certainly you do that. My last question is, do you
Sure.
have, and this is hard for an author because we write a
Okay.
lot, we say a
Uh-huh.
lot of words, and a public presenter, fellow TED talker over here, not
Uh-huh.
fellow, I'm not there yet, haven't done that, but you have, I know, in Sedona. Is there a last message that's coming to you for the viewers who are tuning into this interview, on a psychological or intuitive
Okay.
basis, that you feel could close up our this incredible dialogue here today?
Oh, that's such a good question. It's funny, it actually wraps back to what you just said. I had chills when you said, "You know what? You didn't you didn't let your story define you. You defined your life." Like and that, I mean, literally I had to toe chills. And I think that just is everything. I feel like part of what I felt through some of the embarrassment of falling down the rabbit hole with an abuser, all of that stuff, was that if I would just talk about it and say, yeah, I did that. And I just am so embarrassed by this. Like, that it will bust
Mm,
through that shame, right? So I feel like that was really me saying, I'm not going to be defined by this. I'm not going to
mm.
hide from it. I'm not going to, apologize for it. I'm just going to take it and keep moving forward. And I think that's key. That was key in my life. Like, I can make it happen, make the story happen, that I see playing out, the one that I want to play out. Like, I can make that happen. I don't have to sit and
Yeah.
play small. I don't have to play small.
Yeah, and you certainly are not these days. And you're so right. There's a lot of shame from suicide to abuse.
Yes.
But I'm sure, from your story and plenty of other people that I know, that when you do talk about it, you find a universality to it. You find that
Mhm.
others are now coming out and taking ownership of their stuff, and there's a big
Yeah.
just coming out party. And so I think people are able to see strength in vulnerability. um, they really are, in taking ownership of these things and just saying it for what they are and not keeping it buried. So
Yes.
that leads to a lot more burdens, and real strength lies in you know catharsis and getting it out and living with a purpose. So, Kiersten
Mhm.
Hathcock,
Oh,
I couldn't thank you enough for being my honored guest. You're welcome anytime.
thank
I
you.
strongly encourage my viewers to check out your page as well as your book, Little Voices. Highly recommend it. So please do check it out. I'm sure it's on Amazon and all
Mhm.
places as well too. So
That
do
is.
check it out. Thank you so much for your generous time. You're welcome back anytime.
Oh, thank you, Jacob. I had the best time. Thank you so much for all the work you do and for having me on your show. It was awesome.
That was a wonderful interview with Kirsten. She is quite a force, and she's been able to really transcend so much of her own pain and childhood experiences, into the profound healer and influencer that she is today. I strongly suggest checking out your own little voice as well as her book, The Little Voice, Little Voices, and our conversation hopefully summarized the value of intuition and how it can be a guiding force in your path and transcend pain into your own healing. So we'll see you here next week. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and share this video so that we can create a broader community of more and more souls tuning into a higher plane and climbing each rung of the ladder one step at a time. Jacob Cooper signing off. We'll see you next week. Thank you.